Welcome to the United We Scan podcast, the podcast by rural carriers for rural carriers. The views expressed in this podcast do not reflect the views or opinions of the United States Postal Service or the National Rural Letter Carriers Association. We ask that you please consult your assigned union representative for guidance in your local area. Make sure you like this podcast, share with your fellow rural carriers, and subscribe to be notified each time a new episode is uploaded. Please rate this podcast 5 stars where applicable, and leave a comment or question for us below. Thank you. Now, here are the hosts of the United We Scan podcast.
Welcome back, everybody. Day behind, but that's because we had some of our wonderful people were at SWAC this weekend, and we will definitely be doing a recap over that. And to get us off started, Josh, how was your week?
My week was not too bad. Posts are submitted for a day for next week, not this week, but next week on the 9th. And let's see, 15th or 16th, they handed the slip back to me saying documentation required. I'm sorry, doesn't that mean it's already approved since it was more than 3 business days? Other than that, it was a pretty decent week. Nice tempered weather. And then it got cold again Saturday afternoon. Hopefully this week coming up won't be as horrible. James, how was your week?
Well, after a couple of days of working, I ended up leaving out Wednesday to make the 16-hour trek to SWAC and got up to Springfield, Missouri before I had to shut it down for a nap, and then finished away, picked up Bill at the airport early in the morning, and then attended SWAC the whole weekend. That was my week, and we're going to get into what else happened this week in this episode, so I'm going to leave it to that for now.
Yeah,
How about
I
you,
know.
Bill?
Bill decided he was going to visit me and not even tell me he was here.
No, I wasn't going to visit you. Hell, they got a damn fine airport in Charlotte. What's wrong with you?
See?
You got Chick-fil-A and Cinnabon in there and Bojangles. The hell, Josh? You out of your damn mind?
At a bar or 3.
Well, how was your week, Bill? Thanks for asking. Let's see. I had Tuesday off for snow, and then I had Thursday off for snow because they didn't deem it necessary to plow my road till like 1 p.m. in the afternoon. And we had over 7 inches, and I spent 40 minutes trying to get out of my parking space to get to the road. And then when I got to the road, I couldn't get up the road because of the incline. And, one of the smart asses at work said, well, why don't you go down the road the other way? And I said, because it goes back up on the other side. Anyway, that's how my week went. Of course, I stepped into, double DPS and flats on Wednesday, and then I just, made a deal to take care of that, without involving 8127 time, and got basically 5 hours of overtime. So that worked out for me. And then turned around and got to the airport for the flight to Oklahoma City. Got in the wrong line and almost ended up in Jamaica. But American Airlines was good enough to book me up a later flight at 10 o'clock at night, and then that was delayed for an hour. And then I saw James' smiling face at the airport, and it's like, you dumbass. And and the hotel was really nice, wasn't it, James?
Yeah, it
James?
was really nice. I have myself
Yeah,
on mute
they had-
because I'm still in the car.
They had cloth hand towels in the bathrooms down here, the main restrooms. And it's like, oh, excuse me. But other than that, I mean, SWAC was interesting. There was a footnote that we'll be following in a couple months, but it's a very exciting footnote. So, Kristen, how was your week?
My week was all over the place. Honestly. What did I do? Yes, so I worked, and I had Tuesday off to take my daughter to her first OB appointment, and I did shed a tear when they did the ultrasound, I will admit. And yep, there's one baby in there. There's a little alien at the moment. And then Wednesday, I did the final OJT for my new RCA. And Wednesday night, I had my daughter back up to the ER because she was severely dehydrated. And got home at 12:30 in the middle of the night and worked on Thursday and started training our second new RCA on Friday. Did that Friday and Saturday. And yeah, that was pretty much my week in a handbag. I work tomorrow, finish off the OJT, the one RCA on Wednesday, and then I have a 3-day. I took Friday off, used up one of my X days, and then next week, and then the following week, excuse me, I start training RCA number 3. So my new RCA should be well acquainted with the route by the end of the month. Yeah, that was my week. Unfortunately, I did not get to join you guys at SWAC, but sounds like I missed one heck of a time down there.
Oh, you
Toasty,
have
how was your
no
week?
idea. You gotta
Toasty,
unmute
how was your
yourself,
week?
Toasty.
My bad. My week was pretty good. Pretty excited. I got a, new package pickup, and they sell a lot of apparel deemed towards first responders and military, and they send out a lot. So hopefully that'll show up on the mini mail survey after this one. I don't think it's going to do much effect on this one, but and then after a year, it'll really help boost my route. So hopefully I can start squaring off here soon. But other than that, Thursday is my K day. Started driving up to Oklahoma. Made the 7-hour drive for SWAC. Got a lot of information from there. So it was nice finally getting involved and going to a conference and figuring everything out.
Yeah, it's a new experience if it's one you haven't done before, that's for sure. Of course, then you get into stuff like National Convention, and that'll just blow your mind away, won't it, guys?
Oh yeah,
Yep,
these
just
little
like state on
conferences.
steroids.
These little conferences are nice for good information when you can get it. When you go to your state convention, it's a lot more standard than a regional convention, and there's a lot more work to do than the conferences like this one. And then national is a state convention on steroids.
Yes, it is, definitely. But it's not all that bad. It's once you get used to it and the dynamics of how it works, then you can always help everybody else around that's never done it before.
And don't be afraid to ask. If you don't know what's going on, ask somebody because that's what they're all there for. These regional conventions are
Supposedly.
supposedly a good place to reach out to your national board members. But we'll get into that a little bit later as well. But the first things that happen is, of course, you get a hotel room, you check into your hotel room, and then the conference actually starts. And information the first night was OWCP and the retirement. And they run those at the exact same time. So you have to choose whether you want to listen to OWCP or you want to listen to retirement. This time I went to OWCP and listened to Devin Cassidy talk about OWCP and all the stuff involved with that. The OWCP is available for, our OWCP rep is available only for dues paying members, according to Devin Cassidy. So if you have a workman's comp claim and you are a dues paying member, reach out to our OWCP rep at national office, Devin Cassidy. His information is listed on the union website, so you can find it there. Alternatively, if you need somebody and you're not a dues paying member or you're not getting the answers that you think you need to get, contact Ron Speakman of Fed Up because he's been an information vessel just for OWCP. I did not attend the retirement seminar, but somebody that did could speak up on that. Let us know what it was about. Did you attend it, Toasty? Did you attend the retirement, or did you attend? Or were you there for that?
I was in the OC WP with you.
Oh yeah, that's right. These days we're running together with all of us having so much fun.
And I had to miss it. It's okay.
And then moving on to the next day came the information stuff, including our presentations from our national board. I think it was, or what? No, it was all the presentations of all the vendors that were there, like APCU, CVS Caremark, and others that were talking for that were in SWAC with their stuff. And then we got to, from there, we went to candidates for national office, of which Bill, myself, and Toasty stood up and announced our candidacy for national board in front of the SWAC people. Bill did a great job. Toasty did a great job. I especially like that Toasty actually involved the crowd in his speech and then I stood up. And somebody else could say how I did.
Ended on a funny note, at least.
But what about the rest of it?
I think you were able to point out the flaws and you pointed out the good. You gave them the credit that they do for the the National Steward System with the training, and then you called that the tip of the iceberg of exactly what we need to start doing. And then got pretty serious in there, and then you turned around and at least gave the crowd a laugh to help them remember you.
Yeah, then that closed the events for that day, and then the next day started the remarks from the national, or it was the remarks from the national officers, which then led into the Q&A with the national officers, if I'm not mistaken. I don't have the schedule in front of me, so I'm trying to do this from memory.
Hello?
But we can hear you.
Can you hear me? Okay.
I can hear you.
This damn phone. What the hell? I don't, I'd rather have my laptop. Sorry about that.
Yeah, no worries.
Anyway,
So,
I was trying to give you information in regards to the retirement, and the gentleman that did the presentation did an excellent presentation, and probably 90% of what people don't understand in regards to what they have to do. And I'll put his name up on the chat. There is John Embleton, and he is a employee of the National Rural Letter Carriers, and he specializes in this. And he did a great presentation.
If I'm not mistaken, he's the one that took it out. He's the one that they hired on to do that, so it's not put in the hands of the vice president anymore, if I'm correct, right?
You are correct, yes. So you'll have less duties to do. You can concentrate on the training and the conventions.
Awesome, awesome. And yeah, that was the one thing that I failed to mention when I was talking about the training, the academies, and all that stuff, was also the job for vice president is booking the conventions, setting up and arranging the conventions. And I remember at my caucus 2 years ago, and somebody had asked about that. I come from a background of 15 years in hotels and resorts of all levels, from timeshare to full service hotels. I am quite familiar with how that stuff works. So I guess that's kind of from the hotel standpoint, I'm familiar with. So
you'll have to put that in your speech when you get nominated.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah. And we definitely need people that are willing to get up there that'll be at national to nominate us. So we're not nominating each other all the time.
Nope.
So if anybody out there has the balls to get up in front of everybody and nominate one of us, reach out to us and let us know. We'll get that arranged.
Yep, and don't forget, we need
not only do we need the people to
walk
nominate us,
around on caucus night.
Yes.
We have people who will walk with the candidates and help them with like carrying whatever they need for supplies to go to the room, things like that. I will tell you this: last year at Michigan, when we had at Grand Rapids, approximately a third of the Michigan delegation walked with Bridget Boziak.
The entire board did. State board did.
Yeah, and quite a few others walked with her as well. So second day started with Don Maston talking with the crowd, and I got so frustrated with it that I turned around and I started writing what he was saying onto Facebook as fast as I could. Bill even talked about it. My fingers were moving so fast he couldn't see my thumbs and thought one of them flew off and hit the wall.
Yeah.
But I was trying to bring the information he was saying to everybody because you all deserve to hear this. It's important to know what your board is doing, what they think, what they say, and how they say it, because transparency is the key to a strong union. Leadership talking to the craft talking to the leadership listening to the craft, the leadership not ignoring the craft, not turning around and blocking the craft, turning around and just, I'll get back to you later about it. It never does it. Then we went on break, and we came back from break, and they made a comment about live posting. So someone here is live posting the proceedings on social media, and while we cannot allow recording or audio or video recording. We cannot prevent somebody from posting on social media because it's just the same as talking to your coworker in the office. I looked through social media. The only person live posting from SWAC was me.
He called you right out on stage.
Yeah.
And
He even cornered
he cornered me as I was coming out of the bathroom, and he was going there. He cornered me in that little corner there, and said, "I hope you're posting everything I say and not just little tidbits, like the media does." So apparently he doesn't like the media either. Oh, when you can't control the media, you kind of have a problem. You can't control the narrative. So that set me off even more. So I have now made it my mission to tell the craft everything I can that is going on, because our craft deserves to know what's going on. They've unleashed a beast when it comes to taking care of this craft, and I am not going to stand by and let them continue to push carriers around like they don't exist. I've heard that they've already removed 7 ADRs or DRs that didn't agree with the national board. DRs?
Yeah. DRs,
Okay,
and
so
then
DRs.
and 10 to 12 ADRs.
And 10 to 12, 8. Oh, wow, that's even more. The numbers keep going up. So if any of you know these DRs and ADRs that are good DRs and ADRs, let them know I'm here for them. I'm here for the craft, because somebody has to be, since the national board obviously doesn't give a fuck.
And the way he was talking about the SDNCs made it sound like he absolutely thought they were amazing. All new cases. It's so cool when the parcel bin gets full, it pushes out one and puts another in there. He may not have said 100% that he agreed with it, but he certainly came across like that.
It was like having a little joy there.
Yeah, needless to say, they're not all they're cracked up to be, but we'll let them think whatever they want.
Well, remember, they're smarter than us.
Oh yeah, that's right. That's right. As I remember, 2 years ago, it being said that anyone can deliver but the mail, but not everyone can do this job,
including them.
obviously. The craft wants to be heard. That's the thing. When they're trying to reach out to their DRs and their ADRs for help, and they're getting crickets, or they file that grievance and they pass it on to, they don't have a local steward and it has to go up, and they get crickets, or they get settled for language and nothing gets better. The craft wants to be heard, and they're too busy trying to protect themselves than they are to listen to what the craft is trying to tell them.
Well, I found it interesting that, in the course of his speech, he was talking about the resolutions and the fact that, they got like 420 resolutions and they have to whittle it down to 20 or 30, and he'd prefer it to be 20. And one of the resolutions was the CBUs having cover over them. And he said, and that's not going to go because that only affects like 15% of the craft, and I have to look at something that affects the majority of the craft. Well, if you have somebody that has a problem with that and it constitutes 15%, and then you have another group of people have a resolution that's another 15%, well, now you're up to 30%, and you have plenty of issues affecting everybody. But you just can't sit there and say, on the basis of percentages that you're not going to address it, because guess what? You represent all of them, not just the majority. Same way you have a grievance, you're filing it for one, not for everybody, but you have to file and follow up on that grievance for the individual. Yeah, you don't want to put covers over CBUs. Guess what? Make them all curbside then.
Yes, curbside CBUs are awesome. I love pulling up in my truck on those.
Well, no, I'm talking about curbside boxes.
Oh, curbside CBUs are nice though too.
I think his number is a little
I
flawed.
wouldn't know. You think?
He's saying only 15% of the craft has CBUs. So you're saying only 15% had routes that were either already had them and or have new growth in the last few years. Because all new growth has to be CBUs.
Or all CBUs.
Yep.
So, I thought that was a little narrow-minded. And, guess what? If you have 420, passed resolutions, present all 420. Don't marginalize the others because those people are paying their dues too. Yes, so supposedly you're not going to be able to present them all, but, you should be bringing them to the table and they ought to be part of the discussions and at least, pass it on to the post office. But for you to make the decision that affects these carriers, that's not your job. Your
There's a
job is to
reason.
represent them.
I know there's a
There's
percentage of those 400 and something that were very similar. So I can understand condensing or eliminating this one for that one because of the way it's worded.
Right.
That's not what you do. That's not what you do. What you do is you start out with the one that is the best for the craft. You start out with the one that's the best for the craft, and you keep the rest of them in your back pocket if they're identical to the ones you have already. Then you turn around and when the post office goes, well, we can't do that, you bring in the next one that's the best for the craft, the second best. You use those as tools to continue to put that in your contract. And them saying that only 20 or 30 resolutions are going into the contract. No, the craft spoke at National Convention. They wanted these resolutions on the wish list to be put into the contract. You use every single one of them at the bargaining table. You don't turn around and say, oh, well, I don't like this resolution, so it's not going in. The craft spoke to you. You do what the craft says because the craft put the resolutions in for you to use. And if you're not willing to listen to the craft, retire.
And the craft pays you. How about that one? Try to remember that when you're doing negotiations. We pay you to represent us, plain and simple. And what gets me about the whole situation with the resolutions? Here you have people who have not carried mail in 20 years making decisions for what's best for you, and they have no idea. I mean, I'm sorry, is that hypocrisy or what?
Oh, but don't forget, Bridget was the best carrier in her office, at least at SWAC, she said.
And 2 years ago, she said when asked when she last carried her out was 2002. So it's been at least 22 years since she's carried mail, but she's the best carrier in her office.
Well,
Well,
maybe the best
I mean,
dressed.
The best carrier in her office in the Director of Labor Relations office.
Well, yeah, she'd have you there.
So going back to contract negotiations, I got a good one for you guys. Remember how we keep talking about this MOU that keeps getting extended or brought back about carriers
I was
volunteering
waiting for this. I was waiting
about
for this.
and how I
Yep.
have brought this up numerous times on if this keeps going, it's gonna end up where? What did you guys hear this weekend?
That he's thinking about
In the
putting it in the contract.
In the contract. Are you freaking kidding me?
I saw that and I passed it on to someone and they said, was that a resolution that was passed on the floor?
No, it was not.
No, it was not. So therefore, if it ends up in the contract, we as a craft have a right to reject that contract for that basic reason, because it is not something that we as a group at National Convention as delegates agreed to.
What started out as a Band-Aid, especially during COVID, and has continued on as a Band-Aid. So instead of ripping that Band-Aid off and making management do what they're supposed to do for hire and retaining, let's just try and put this in the contract so that management can abuse us even more, because now they're like, oh, well, we can mandate you. No, technically it's still supposed to be voluntary, but you know what? They're going to turn that into more mandating.
Or they'll just turn around and say it's a direct order, grieve it, and then we'll settle it for language again. And unless we get new leadership in the national board, we'll just settle it for language. Don't do it again. Slap on the hand. Or management will comply. That's their famous line. Will comply. The same line they've been using since the 70s, since after the Great Postal Strike. They've been
Can we
trying
at
to get the
least
unions to use it.
can we at least get a cease and desist at the bare minimum?
No, that
No.
language is
Well,
too strong. It's too strong.
the only way this would work in any way acceptable to the craft is if A, it's on a voluntary basis, and B, it's double time. No time and a half, double time. If you want to utilize people, you're going to pay for it. But like we discussed last year, we brought this up last year. I brought up the getting rid of table 2 and 4, and the next thing you know, Don was pumping on that. The one question I asked that they did actually do on the stage was about the two tables. And Don's, the question was, were you on the board at the time when the two tables? Yeah, well, but it was forced on us by the arbitrator because the APW, just because the APW did it doesn't mean it should have been forced on us, that it should have ever been a consideration. But the fact of the matter was, you were on the board when this was instituted. So guess what? You get to take some of the credit for it, and it's got to stop. He said we're a package like UPS and FedEx. Nah, UPS, no, not so much like FedEx.
Oh no, we're turning into a parcel delivery service. We're no longer a mail delivery service. We're a parcel delivery service.
Mhm.
So don't expect to be delivering mail much longer. Although I have to argue that number one, you're not going to be just delivering parcels, because there are politicians that will ensure that their third class political ads that are treated as first class mail will still be delivered by the United States Postal Service. I guess I say good luck at getting that to happen.
Yeah, well, don't underestimate their inability to do anything.
The only thing I know is when they were in that Q&A and they were giving answers and they were sitting there trying to think of the answers, when they were given the cards a long time before they got to the Q&A, and they're still sitting there trying to think of the answers to the cards that they had in their hands, not to include the ones that they threw away because they didn't want to bother answering them.
Like mine.
Yeah. What was your question?
They didn't throw them away. They just ran out of time.
My two questions were on what's the update on WSH and what is the update on the step 4 on the pay debacle? Do you remember them ever answering those?
No, they didn't.
Mm-hmm.
Because you can go to the Rex guideline and get the information on the WSH.
You go to the Q&A
You can't find the
and
numbers on the radar report, but
and then you have the fact that they turned around and were answering questions that were already, who is crunching
Sorry.
Garrett.
there, they were answering questions that had already been answered on social media and replying with the answers that were already on social media. It was hilarious to listen to.
Well, they're consistent. It was a bit of a farce with the Q&A. It really was. But
It
we were
always-
available.
It always is
Yeah.
a farce with the Q&A, though.
Oh, I do
Yeah.
I do remember one question that was asked is, why do we have to put the questions on an index card when you could just take questions from the floor? And their response was, well, so we can get them to the right people and so they can come up with the correct answer. And yet they had to take their time figuring out the answer after they read the question. And then he also stated
Oh, don't
that we're
don't
also
forget
available.
to prevent.
Well, yeah, they were
Go ahead.
also available for everybody outside of the proceedings for people to talk to, except the problem was every time we went out for a break, they were talking amongst themselves and you couldn't get a word in edgewise if you tried. Shirley
Yeah,
and
they put
Bridget
it
were
on the
talking
index
with each
card to
other.
prevent chaos.
Oh yeah, to prevent chaos. And then Shirley and Bridget would be talking to each other the whole time, and Pitts and Maston would be talking to each other the whole time. The only board member that was available to talk to was Kirby Ricketts.
Who? I didn't see him there.
Wait,
You mean Nikki
I gotta
Phillips?
Phillips?
Nikki Phillips. Jesus, I'm tired. I'm sorry. I'm tired.
I was gonna say that was the wrong area for
Yeah.
Kirby.
Nikki Phillips. Nikki Phillips. I apologize. I am very tired right now. I've been driving for about 6 hours now straight. So after sitting through SWAC for this morning. So apologies for the mistake. Nikki Phillips was the only one available for everybody. And I appreciate Nikki Phillips taking the time to talk with people and answer questions for people. and being a great gentleman to the people.
I also enjoyed his presentation on how to write a resolution, what is non-binding and what is binding. It was a quick, simple, straight to the point presentation that didn't put you to sleep.
Yeah, his was a
Didn't they?
lot
They
quicker.
all put me to sleep.
His presentation was quicker and easier to understand than our resolution episode that we did. Let me just say that.
Which, guess what? That time of year is coming up quickly again for resolutions. So we
Yeah.
may go back and touch on that again, since you guys got a little quick overview on how to do it quickly. We may do another future episode coming up touching on resolutions again. I know my local annual meeting will be in April, so we will.
Yeah, here's a funny that came up was a question: why do all the national people sit together, and they don't disperse through the crowd and sit among the carriers? And Don says, well, because we work together, we like each other, and we're always talking about business. Then we had the dinner last night, and Bridget and Shirley were sitting at a table with a gentleman that wasn't on the national board. Nikki Phillips sat with us, and I didn't see the rest of them, at all. But I thought you guys were friends. I guess they didn't put such a united front together at the dinner. That's just my observation, though.
I tell you what, though, I get, if we get on the national board and we're at banquets or we're doing whatever, I am more than happy to go sit and mingle with everybody. That doesn't bother me one bit.
I would rather be like we were here at SWAC. We're not just in one spot. We're moving around. We're talking to people, even if it's just asking them how your day's going, things like that. It's important to connect to the craft if you're in a leadership role.
I agree.
It's important
100%.
to get out there, see how things are going, see if they have any problems, see if there's any suggestions they have. Because guess what? When you're in that leadership position, most of the time you're sitting in an office working on paperwork. But getting out and talking with the craft is your one way of finding out what's going on in the trenches, finding out who's having issues, who's having problems, has an idea for something new that the union could do that you never thought of before. You can get that from your craft. Our craft are strong, intelligent adults who do a wonderful job out there on the streets, and they see what's going on the streets. You don't see that sitting in your office in DC. You don't see that in the house in Alexandria. You need to be talking to the craft. And when you're not listening to them, when you're not understanding what they're saying, or you're turning around and instead of listening to what they're saying, you're turning around and dismissing it, brushing it under the rug, that's when you create issues of malcontent. That's when you turn around and you have people become non-dues paying, or as you put it, freeloaders and scabs. Now,
yeah,
I think that when you say scabs, I think of somebody who's sitting in an office blocking regular carriers, rural carriers that are out on the street, ignoring rural carriers out on the street, not answering rural carriers on the street. That is a scab to me. Someone who is destroying this union from the inside because they're too full of themselves to listen.
Well, tell us how you really feel, James. But
well, like
no,
James so eloquently put it, they instead of answering a question, they spend their time silencing their problems.
yes, yes.
They're so busy protecting their ass that they don't even do their jobs.
And if you are dare to be disagreeing or arguing with them with something, they will remove you from your position.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, and they will do anything and everything to silence you. And even if you're just a regular carrier, they'll send your union rep after you to get you to be silenced. And if you're a union rep, whether it be a local steward, area steward, assistant district rep, or even a regional rep, they will remove you. If you disagree with anything they say, they will remove you. But I'm going to tell you this, anybody who wants to talk to me or anybody else on this podcast, we're here for the craft, because that's the only thing that matters is the craft. Without the craft, there's no union. Without the craft, there's no rural mail carriers. And without the craft, the mail's not getting delivered.
'Cause I know, with you guys being gone, I know when James had a moment, he was helping me out, but I was fielding, I was answering stuff on our DMs, and I check that email a couple times a day anymore. It's just part of my routine now. But yeah, we're definitely here to listen.
It's funny because I always say we have the greatest resources available to us. We have 100,000 people out there that have knowledge and experience in all different areas of the contract, the Elm, the 603. And isn't it great to draw upon that instead of sitting in Alexandria pretending you know all the answers? We have 100,000 encyclopedias walking around that all have some tidbit of knowledge that is useful to us. And it's like to draw on that. It's right there.
Piece.
It's like liquid gold right there. And most people are willing to share it with you. So why don't you take advantage of that?
And then there was another slide that Maston showed during his presentation that really got to me, that really affected me. And that was the slide of how many people have left the union in SWAC. And the slide said in one state, they added 10 members. But with that 10 members, with the other 3 states, 230 carriers dropped their due. They dropped them. And what does that mean? That means they felt something was wrong to have to drop their dues. The question is, did anybody go and ask them why? Did anybody else try and figure out if they could solve the problem to keep them on the dues paying roll? No. They just let them drop them and walked away. Because guess what? We don't care. We've got our narrative to control. They can disappear. Even though if we had every rural carrier that was non-dues paying on the rolls, Don Masson says that it would be $17 million more to be able to fight for the craft. But instead of fighting for the craft, they're ignoring the craft. And when the money gets lower and lower, it doesn't come out of their paychecks. It comes out of protecting the craft.
How would 17 million help them fight for us? Seems like an excuse.
Yeah, but boy, they didn't mind putting that out there, did they?
No, because it's always about the money.
Well, $17 million is, for most rural carriers, especially those on table 2, is a lot of money. But for our national board and for anything that we would do to protect the craft, if we were to actually protect the craft, would go into step 3, step 4, paying for those hours that those people are working, paying for arbitration in situations, things like that, paying for materials to help train our stewards and our ADRs or DRs, training them on how to do the proper procedures for grievances, things like that. There are so many useful things that we could do to protect the craft with $17 million if we just tried to protect the craft.
Yeah, how about recruiting and properly training new stewards and backing them up? Instead of putting the burden of the grievance on them, giving them the tools that they need. How about going after these people in management who are treating their carriers like shit and going after them in the courts, not just through the grievance process to get them removed, go through the EEOs and the National Labor Relations Board. Our people put their asses out on the line every day. They don't deserve to be treated like this.
I've spoken with,
like the one lady said, we have the joint form on dignity and respect, and yet they don't abide by it.
But they'll beat us over the head with it.
Oh yeah.
They'll
if you fight,
they'll
you'll
put you
get
on
fired.
emergency placement. Yeah, they'll put you on emergency placement preceding termination for violation of that, but management won't be put on emergency placement for it. We have ADRs and DRs that are working hundreds of hours each week, 100 hours a week, protecting this craft. Those people deserve to be paid for those hours, but they aren't. They're getting less than minimum wage per hour that they're actually working for the craft from the national board, because the only people that are paid, quote unquote, paid by the post office is local stewards. Everybody above that is paid by the union. There's a lot we could do to protect this craft if we just sat down with the craft and figured out how to protect them the best.
So here's my thing. If they're going to get rid of ADRs and DRs or whatnot because they got into an argument or they disagree with them on something, what about these ADRs and these DRs that you hear crickets from and aren't doing their job? See, this is where you hear all the time about how their loyalties lay with the board. This is why.
Only
This
from
is
my
why.
point of view, and this is only my point of view, this to me seems a lot like a purge. Get rid of some of the people that supporters of Don and were of Ronnie's. Because once you do, you pull a purge off like that, then everybody's obligated to support you for your jobs. Because guess what? If you don't, we're going to get rid of you.
To me, it reminds me of when you get disciplined at the post office. This investigative interview may result in discipline up to and including termination. So if you don't follow what we tell you to do, we're going to get rid of you.
Mm-hmm. What's the point of getting rid of people who have 20 years experience just at a whim? I mean,
I think
what kind of sense does that make?
That should be a question put on one of those index cards for the board to throw out.
Well, the thing of it is, if you want to strengthen the union, you don't turn around and get rid of the people protecting the craft.
Because, especially if you have a disagreement.
Oh my God, yeah.
I mean, if you have a disagreement with something, then you sit down and you talk it out, and you've come to figure out why there's the disagreement and where you can come to equal ground on. You don't just get rid of them because they disagree with you.
I mean, hell, if that was the way of the world, I'd have been divorced 32 times in 36 years.
Right?
At least.
If that was the case, none of us would be continuing to work on this podcast with each other.
Yeah.
We disagree all the time, but we resolve it because we're adults and we actually listen to each other.
Yeah, and there are times where we just and there are times where we just agree to disagree on something because, well, that's what you do. You can't be it's my way or the highway all the time. It just doesn't work out, as we can see.
You have to be able to take other people's experiences and notice that they grew up different or they learned different or they had a different life experience, and be able to have sympathy and empathy to go ahead and try to figure out, okay, that's why they think this way, instead of just saying it's my way or the highway.
And when it comes to, with grievances, and, you could have a grievance about the same thing, but it could be with two different grievances pertaining to the same contract violation or a disciplinary for something similar, yet they're two completely separate, different grievances, and they need to be viewed that way. And
that's another thing in the grievance process, to get rid of the language, as a precedent for future grievances. Hell no. I'm going to use everything in my arsenal that I have available. The pound management. Like I said, it's like being a defense attorney. You learn and you take from each case that you prosecute, and you learn along the way what works, what doesn't work, what works with this judge, what works with that judge. But the fact of the matter is that you're drawing on that experience. Same thing with the grievance. The grievance should be built off of what precedingly was, settled in our favor, so that what worked. And that's the kind of stuff that should be training the stewards, instead of just sitting there going, okay, somebody didn't work on Saturday and they're on the overtime list, but another person who wasn't on the overtime. No, demonstrate, walk them right through a damn grievance from step, filling it out all the way to completion, to a settlement, and demonstrate your ability to teach that too.
And what's this thing? I mean, we've got stewards that were elected before the holidays that are still sitting waiting for their steward training.
Yeah, who is the one guy? He's in his 4th month waiting to get trained.
I know of 2 that are in their 1, 2, factory going on their 4th month as well. They were told last month that it would be the end of the month, beginning of the next month, and they were told that in the middle of the month, and it's still no word since. And we're almost to the end of
Yeah,
the 2nd month.
and that's not right. These people were elected in their office to be a local steward. Their job now, after being elected, is to protect that office. And we're sitting on our hands doing absolutely nothing to get them up to where they need to be stewards in those offices. If I were the director of steward operations, I'd be getting on those DRs to train those guys. It doesn't matter if it's one student or 15 students or whatever. Each steward needs to be trained in a reasonable amount of time after they are elected. And if you can't do it, pass it up the chain, because they need to be in those offices fighting for those carriers.
Yeah, getting steward training is a longer process than getting hired at the post office.
Just about. I don't know. They're kind of evening the scales lately.
Well, in your office, but not nowhere else. It's still a shit show across the country.
Yeah. I'm just on a marathon of training new RCAs, that's all. While we wait for our elected local steward to get trained for being a steward. Well, guys, I know James is still on the road and Bill's still at the hotel. And do you guys want to wind this down for tonight? Make it a short one?
I think the editor would appreciate that.
I am the editor tonight.
Like I said. Oh, that and
Yeah.
talking about local stewards. Recently I saw someone, I can't remember where, posted that they're the local. I can't remember if they actually were trained or not, but they were told they're the only local steward in their district.
That's just pathetic that there's
You
not
know-
enough local stewards in that district.
Well, it's a shame that nobody wants to do it, you know? I mean, yeah, how many local stewards have quit of their own accord because of, not wanting to put up with the grief and the bullshit? You know, how the hell are you going to retain, RCAs when you can't even keep stewards in there?
It speaks more to the national board than it does to the local people in those offices. You got to also ask in that district, how many of those offices actually know who their current union rep is, who their current officer is that's protecting their office. And
Yeah.
I know that for me, it was a few years before I knew who my rep was in my office. And that's why I ran with it, because nobody else knew exactly who it was or wouldn't tell me. And I had to find that out myself. And that's pathetic that there are offices out there with carriers that are 10, 15 years into their careers who have absolutely no clue who their union rep is.
Yeah, that's a little disheartening, isn't it?
I just got a message saying that someone's local elected steward has been waited 6 months to get training
Wow.
because the ADR doesn't want that person as the local, so has been trying to not have the training with them.
See, and that's what the one in my office and the one in the other office are, they're even raising their eyebrows and questioning that because of their association with me, wondering why it's taking so long to hear back on when they're going to have their training.
And I hate to bring this up, but I think I have a target on my back. Every time I go to these places, these conventions, the people at the registration know who I am.
Bill,
I go up and I go,
we couldn't
know who
walk
you
out
are.
the door at National without people knowing who you were.
I couldn't even get my name out. We know who you are.
No,
I'm
my
not sure
favorite
if that's a good thing or not.
my favorite part at any of these things is I recognize that voice. I don't recognize the face, but I know that voice.
It was the one guy that we met there. He says, I want to come over and say hi and all. He goes, you're not what I thought you'd look like. I'm like, really? He goes, yeah, I thought you'd be, stouter. I was like, okay. I'm sorry to disappoint you. No. It's just your voice sounds like, you'd be shorter. Well, I can stoop if you want me to, but what the hell? That was funny. Yeah. And it's always nice putting the face with the face.
Oh, yes.
It really
It
is.
always is. I agree.
Yeah. Now you have, some kind of, grounds to go on when you hear them on the podcast or anything else. It's like, Yeah, I know him. He's an asshole.
But I'm
Hey,
your
I'm the
asshole.
best I can be. Okay, what can I say? You know, I have worked years to develop this attitude, and I'm proud of it. But yeah, it was
It's,
good to see.
it's
I mean, all those people there, and like I said, the 40 or so that come over and said hi and told us their stories and the consequences of what's going on in their offices with lack of representation. You know, the fact that management has no knowledge of what a contract is. It's like, you got to be kidding me. No, they're not. You can't make this shit up, and they don't. It goes on every day across the country, and it's got to stop.
I have the copy
Got
of
to
our
stop.
office contract at my case, and I periodically grab one of those little post-it note tabs and I stick it where I think they need to read, and then I go back over and put it on their desk. I'm very
That's
good for
funny.
printing language out and highlighting it and leaving it on the desk when I get in the morning, because my management doesn't show up until a half hour after the carriers most of the time, and which is also against the M38, by the way. But I am well known for just leaving language highlighted on the desk and walking away. That always gets them. It's great because they come in, they look up at me, and they look down at it and swipe it off the desk and walk away and shaking their heads and mumbling, and yeah, it's fun. That's how I fight stuff in my office right now.
Whatever works.
Hey,
Whatever works.
exactly.
really,
Yeah.
you talk about being an asshole, but the real thing is that the reason why you are is because you're so passionate for this craft, just like everybody else on this podcast. We're here for the craft, and that's the bottom line. It doesn't matter if you're just an RCA, regular carrier, if you're a local steward, area steward, any of them. We're here for you guys. We listen to you because all that matters is the craft to us.
And
It's the only reason we do this.
somebody said, what if you're a scab?
Well,
I personally don't pick scabs off, so
Yeah.
if you're a member of the craft, we're here for you.
Yeah.
and the only way to heal a scar with a scab is to let it heal, fix the issue, and then there will no longer be a scab.
Exactly. You give them a reason to be part of it again, and where they can trust and see that it's going to work. People will rejoin, and people will join. But if you continue down the road that is going on, more people are going to walk away. They're going to withdraw. I mean, not
Mm-hmm.
just the union, but I mean, look at these offices where the carriers are all getting together and walking out together, quitting. They got something lined up outside. They're walking off. They're tired of being treated the way they're treated. They're tired of not getting the help that's needed from the union that is supposed to have their backs. And so they're done. They're walking away in droves.
No, you're misinformed. That doesn't happen.
Oh, I'm
Don't
sorry.
believe everything you see on social media.
Okay.
Yeah,
Oh, by
Don
the way,
showed us the numbers. Don't worry.
All right.
yeah,
All right.
Yeah,
don't believe everything you see on social media, even though there's a Facebook page for our union, which is social
and
media, correct?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
and when he was going through his slides, there was the one about the evaluations, and on average, before the mini mail survey, rural carriers were getting done about 5 hours under evaluation for the
Seven.
week.
7.
7?
Yep.
But it's between 5 and 7, depending on which slide you were looking at.
Which
And
state
then,
is going through?
yeah, and
Yeah.
then after the mini mail survey, rural carriers were going an hour over evaluation a week,
Under.
average, under an hour. And think about that. He's one of those that likes it on the bell curve, on the bell curve. Well, guess what? If that's the median, there's people that are way over that. There's people that are way under that. You're telling me that that's the average? So I feel sorry for everybody that's over that. I'm glad for the people that are under it, but I'm sad for the people over it.
There is still a ton of under-evaluated and extremely overburdened routes out there. And unfortunately, a lot of these routes are in offices that have no help. They have very few, if any, leave replacements. It's so disheartening to hear of carrier friends working their overburdened routes, under-evaluated routes, working 6 days a week for year, 2 years, 3 years, and there's been nothing to help them whatsoever.
Yeah.
And don't forget, they're getting letters of demand for being over 2280.
Yeah, 2240, 2080.
40. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
I'm
2240. You're gonna get that
tired.
letter of demand done. That's why I was
2080.
trying to wrap it up 10 minutes ago, but we see how well that did. I know.
Yeah.
I blame
But
James.
there's so much information to put out there for everybody. And so much, I gotta say this, the national board, while they were talking and they were going through their presentations and then they went with the Q&A, I heard a lot more groans, sighs, and oh my gods out of that crowd. And these are Southern people, and they're saying, "Oh my God."
Mm-hmm.
Then, oh,
Yeah.
that's good. That's a good answer. I didn't hear that from anybody.
No, you'd have to give one to be able to say that. You know, nobody gave a good answer at anything.
No, they did not. And up next is what, Eastern states in March?
Eastern states. Yep.
Yep. And then we got Western in April and Mid States in May. Mid States wraps up the area conference circuit. So I do believe most of us will be at Mid States.
I know I will.
All right.
I,
As will
I will too.
as will James.
I'm gonna
You
try
come in,
my
Josh?
damnedest.
So it's I'm gonna it'd be interesting if anybody's gonna be at the other two conferences and wants to give us some feedback, even if it's on the down low. Feel free to reach out to us, and just so we can kind of compare notes. And we'll definitely be comparing what's been said coming up with mid states as well. I know I have to work on my speech, and I think these guys will be tweaking theirs up a little bit more for mid states prior to the big show in August at National Convention.
And I do want to
You know,
apologize.
James has got to use that line. You know, they instead of answering questions, they rather silence the problem.
Yeah.
That's so apropos.
And I do want to apologize to our Eastern and Western State Conference members. Unfortunately, I am unable to afford to be able to attend those conferences because number one, I don't have enough leave available, and I don't have enough funds on table 2 to be able to attend. So I will be there in spirit with you guys. And if anything comes up, you can message me and I will respond as long as I'm awake.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
can't afford to go to either one either at this point in time. So
I'll vouch for
unfortunately.
James responding if he's awake, because that's all he does is respond. He's like a first responder.
Well, I kind of haven't
yeah.
since I left the hotel because I've been driving and I don't touch my cell phone while I do that. I'm using my screen to mute and unmute so you guys don't hear all the traffic noise. And I'm talking while staring out the window, so it's like talking to you while you guys are in the car with me. But I will
Oh.
respond. I will respond when I stop for the night. I will go through every notification that I have on Facebook before I fall asleep tonight to try and get back to everybody that responded to the posts that I've made these past few days. And I will respond to any messages that are sent to me at that time as well, because unfortunately, being safe is more important than responding to messages.
Bill, you got asked if you're going to either Western or Eastern State Conference.
No, I won't be going to either one of those. Eastern States is a smaller. It's a really compact conference. And since it's on my side of the country, everybody there knows who I am, and don't think the my presence would make any difference there, being there or not. Okay. As far as Western states is concerned, from reliable source, that because it's in Colorado, it won't be so greatly attended as it should be, because they have a ton of rural carriers out there, but it's not supposed to be greatly attended. It's not as informative, and it's not as carrier friendly in regards to the Q&A sessions that they exercise over the past. So, all right, where do I want to go? Let's go to mid states. Look at all the ballots that are available for, to pick up in the mid states because of the number of carriers are there.
Yeah,
I mean,
we got,
between, SWAC, mid states, you control 2/3 of the votes for the delegates. So that's where I'm going to focus my energies, time on.
yeah,
And I hate to say I'm being political about it, but that's what I'm doing. I mean, I can afford to go to both or the other two, but like I said, Eastern States is not a big to do, and from what I understand, the Western States is poorly attended. So the only people that will really attend it are your state presidents or officers, and whatever NSS people that are required to be there. And that's not our target audience. Our audience is the regular everyday carrier
yeah. I
and the people on the
remember,
national board that monitor this
last
podcast.
year's mid states. I remember getting stopped by a gentleman from another state asking me if I was going to be running again last year.
Hmm.
And I didn't run last year, but and I, when I got the bombshell of going to be a grandma in August, and yes, her due date is literally the day before state or national convention starts. And I have told her many, many times, if you want me there, I don't have to go. I don't have to go. And she every time looks at me and says, "No, Mom, you need to be there. That's where you need to be." So I have the blessing of my daughter to be out in Reno in August. And that's where I will be.
And
Gotta love her.
and let me say
You
this,
know?
we are not putting down those regions. We are
No,
not putting
not
down
in
the
any
people
way.
that are in those regions. We are putting down the way they put on those proceedings.
Yes.
Those proceedings should be craft. Those proceedings should be for the craft, should be for the people. Every one of these should be for the people.
And
And
honestly, if
unfortunately, SAC, Eastern, and Western have gotten away from that programming.
and
So
honestly, I would go if I could afford it and had the extra time. But
exactly, because I want
I
to I want to
personally
hear how
can't
things change.
afford March. That I mean, it's my birthday weekend. It'd been great to go, but I can't afford to go. I've got too much going on the next couple weeks anyways, and and that's just going to carry over into the first part of April. So that's really the only reason why I'm not going is I just can't afford to go at this point.
Yep, and I can't afford to go either, but I wish I could because I do actually want to see how the board has changed what they say. I do want to see how they've adapted their speeches because the speeches that the current national board is going to put on are going to be trying to recruit votes without trying to recruit votes because that would be politicking while being paid to be there, and they're not allowed
Yeah.
to do that. So that will be interesting to see how that plays out. But if somebody's there, please let us know. Multiple people, anybody that's there, reach out and tell us what's going on. We'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, send us an email, send us a DM, whatever. We'd definitely love to hear some feedback from the next two area conferences that are going on that we unfortunately cannot attend. So, we are now going to wrap this up, guys. I do want to get some sleep tonight. One quick question. Does it work like an electoral vote for the delegates? When you get your delegate ballots in the mail, I can't really say it works like an electoral vote. Each state
It's a half and
is,
half.
yeah, each state gets, it's one delegate per 100 members for that state. And those that have either self-nominated to be a delegate or somebody else sent their nomination in, those are the names that are going to appear on the ballot. You may have more than whatever these 1 per 100 is. I know Michigan, it usually varies between 43 to 45, depending on what the membership numbers are. So you don't have to vote the full amount if you don't know who those people are, or they don't align with you, or what you want to see a delegate that's going to get voted. Those ones that have the highest votes are then the delegates. Those are the ones that go and have the voting capabilities and are able to speak on the floor at national convention. That's why we talk about when your delegate ballots come out, please vote. I mean, when you have an estate as big as mine with over 4,000 members and over 4,000 ballots get sent out and only 500 something get returned, that's very disheartening. And that's where we just say, vote. If you don't know who somebody is, ask somebody. Whether that's go to your meetings if you can try and get to like these area conferences that are going on, or reach out and ask somebody who somebody may be, because yes, retirees can be delegates. As long as they are a dues paying retiree, they are allowed to be a voting delegate. And there are some great retirees out there still fighting for us, and then there's some retirees out there that are pretty questionable. But again, you voting for delegates is your own choice. I mean, if your name's on that delegate ballot and you only want to vote for yourself, that's all you got to do. Or if you want to vote for whoever you want to vote for, I mean, it's definitely your choice. But just please vote for the delegates when they come out.
Yeah.
All right, Josh, your final commentary for this evening.
I don't have much to add to what's been said so far tonight. Just be safe out there. Tomorrow's day after a holiday. Don't get yourself overwhelmed. If you do, take a step back, take a deep breath, step back in. Have a good week. We'll catch you next time. Toasty, final comment?
If you ever get a chance, try to get to one of these conferences. You can have all these different sessions like we were talking about at the beginning, where you can either go to OWCP, learn about that, learn about retirement. There's a lot of good information out there. There's also nice little vendors there, APCU and whatnot. Fun little door prizes. I was very pleased and happy with the way SWAC was run. Pretty organized, nice and neat. But try to get to one if you can, just to experience it, so you can know what goes on during these area conferences. And of course, try to get to your state, go to your local, make sure that you can get over to your state convention. And if you can, try to get nominated for the national convention so we can get those votes.
James?
We get very, very passionate on this podcast, and for good reason, because we see how our craft is being treated. We see how our craft is being treated by management. We see how our craft is being treated by leadership. And unfortunately, leadership would rather hide the problem, sweep it under the rug, make it disappear, than actually solve the problem. We're here for the craft. We wouldn't be doing this podcast if the leadership was answering people's questions. We wouldn't have to do social media if leadership was talking to the craft. But we're here for you. Doesn't matter if you're just an RCA, ARC, PTF, regular, or you're a district representative or an area steward, any of those. We're here for you. And at the end of the day, no matter what, we're all in this together.
Bill, it's your turn, dear. Your final
I'm
words.
overwhelmed. I'm overwhelmed. I really am. Well,
Take a
all I
deep
can
breath.
say is that we had a great time at SWAC. Met a lot of great people there. Gained some useful information. We were not disappointed by our national leadership. They were all that we expected. And you can take the sarcasm as heavy as you want, but it's there. And just appreciate James and Jock and Chris and Bill and Chris Savoda and all the other people that you run into. And it's just we got there early. We were there Saturday, Friday morning, and we were building the units for this one display that does the T-shirts, the parcel markers, and all. We put build a coat rack for them and everything. We just helping them out. No expected pay or anything. A lady did offer to give us some T-shirts or hats, but it's nice to be able to help people. And I got a couple T-shirts made that say "Carriers First" on the front, and then "Bill May for President" on the back. And they were embroidered, so it's like a nice touch. And the food was good. I mean, the location's good and everything. So all in all, an enjoyable way to spend the weekend. Learn stuff, meet people, and you know find out what's really important to people, the issues that really mean something to them in regards to how they perform their jobs, how they're treated, and how they're represented. So it's nice to meet these people, and like I said, you put a face with the voice. I'm sorry to disappoint the one gentleman. Thought I'd be stouter, but okay, I'm a semi-tall glass of water, and it was good to see Ronnie looking so healthy. Ronnie Stutz was there, and Ronnie looked like a different man from when he retired last year and walked off the stage. So it's good to see that he's in good health. That's it. I mean, go out there. I mean, what's it today? Today's Monday. Okay, Monday. I can't remember the days. Tomorrow's a day after a holiday. Everybody's gonna get slammed. Take your time. Do your job the best you can. Do it as professionally, efficiently as you can, and make sure you get your ass home because, like I always tell you, you are the most important delivery. And we had several instances that we prayed for in regards to rural carriers during our invocations of the meetings, and it just tears you up to hear that people are being hurt or even losing their lives on the job. So everybody, get home. You are the most important delivery of the day. God bless. Kristen?
Thank you, gentlemen. I know I kind of think I gave my last 2 cents prior to the guys there, but definitely have a I want everybody to have a safe week out there. Yep, the Tuesday after a Monday holiday. It's going to be fun for all of us, isn't it? I know I'll be working in the morning and then right back to training again. But yeah, training marathon for me, as I said before. Outside of that, guys, just stay safe this week, and we'll look forward. Like I said, unfortunately, we're not going to be at Easterns or Western conferences, but we'll hope to see everybody at Mid States. That will be fun and interesting at the same time. And we look forward to it all, and we'll be back next week.
I'm taking a dozen home. And there's a couple of lamps my wife wants me to steal too. So, I have to do that tonight and pack them up.